Good evening. The foreign secretaries of both India and Pakistan concluded the latest round of talks in New Delhi today. Needless to say, the latest information provided by Syed Zabiuddin Ansari, also known as Abu Jundal, dominated the talks, with India making it clear to Pakistan that justice to the victims of 26/11 was top priority. After 2 days of parleys, Foreign Secretary Ranjan Mathai and his Pakistani counterpart Jalil Abbas Gilani agreed that the relationship has to be normalized by narrowing divergences and increased confidence-building measures. Pakistan, on its part, has rejected the role of state agencies in the Mumbai attacks and even expressed willingness for a joint investigation into the 26/11 carnage, with Jalil Abbas and Gilani rejecting the Indian claim that Pakistani state agencies were involved and are involved in terror attacks on India. The K word wasn't even skirted either, as both sides discussed the Kashmir issue. In a joint statement issued after the talks, both the sides said the foreign secretaries will meet again in Islamabad on a date to be decided through diplomatic channels to prepare for a meeting of the foreign ministers in September. Talks weren't without its prickly issues either, with the Indian side not taking too kindly to Jalil Abbas Gilani's meeting Hurriyat conference leaders separately for talks. I welcome you to the big picture tonight, and tonight we'll try and understand where this rocky relationship is going. But before we do that, we will try and gauge the temperature of the talks, given the fact that Abu Jundal has been singing like a canary for the whole world to see. Vinod Sharma, political editor of Hindustan Times, joins me tonight in the studio, as does Anuradha from JNU. SK Dutta is an expert in foreign affairs, is also here. We'll also be joined by Shankar Mukherjee, former ambassador, in just a bit. And also joining us on the phone line is Javed Naqvi, senior journalist as well. I welcome you all to the show. I'd like to start my show with Vinod Sharma, if I could. Sir, the two sides have come out with a joint statement, as expected after such talks. The statement talks of confidence-building measures, friendly engagements, and other sundry diplomatic jargon as well. But the highlight was the evidence gathered by India in light of Abu Jundal's interrogation. India says Jundal has spilled all, giving away the details of a control room which was based in Karachi as well. Pakistan, of course, has strongly denied it, but we should have seen that coming. It's a pattern that we've been seeing in Indo-Pak talks. Whatever evidence we throw their way, they outrightly deny it.
Yes, of course. I think this is the performer response that Pakistan gives to our questions relating to terrorism, regardless of what kind of evidence is there. This evidence, which has been provided by Abu Jundal, hasn't yet been put on the table. There has been a suggestion from the Pakistani side that there should be joint investigation, but India's experience with the joint investigation with Pakistan hasn't been very happy experience. We remember very vividly what happened consequent to the attack on Parliament. There was a joint investigating mechanism which never took off. And in fact, if some claims which are true from the Indian side, that sometimes when there was some intelligence sharing with the Pakistani investigators, actually it led to the people who were sought to be pursued getting alerted. So I think that the trust deficit, which was the main purpose, to remove the trust deficit was the main purpose of this round of dialogue, right, as was decided by the two prime ministers in Bhutan. That trust deficit is still there in large sums, though there has been forward movement on the trade front and talks are continuing. You see, the fact that we are continuing to meet and there is a joint statement, though it reads very bland insofar as people who want solid results are concerned.
Right.
And that's why I think that the Prime Minister, though he is very keen to visit Pakistan, might not be able to do so before the closure of the tenure of this government in Pakistan, because in the Pakistani constitution, they have a provision that 3 or 4 months before the elections, an interim government takes over. And I think by that logic, by that yardstick, this government has just about the year end to go.
Right. That's a very important point. So let me go to Javed Naqvi quickly before I come to Anuradha Chinoy. Welcome to the show, Mr. Naqvi. First of all, Home Minister P. Chidambaram, our Home Minister P. Chidambaram, has made it clear that it has become, and he said this in papers as well, it has become increasingly clear that state actors were involved in executing the 2008 attacks, and that without state actors and the support, the terror control room could not have been established in Pakistan. But procedure on Pakistan's side cannot move forward if they refuse to admit in the first place that the active involvement of state actors in terror attacks on India. Do you agree with that? We won't make any forward movement till the time that Pakistan actually admits that its soil has been used for terror activities against India.
I don't think that is the sense at all from the talks. I think the officials of the two countries have proved to be more sensible and more measured than the media, at least in the Indian case, has shown itself to be. So I think all this talk about Abu Jindal and about terror, it concerns both sides. I have no doubt in my mind, and I am not somebody to double guess the Prime Minister of India, and not just one, several, of the one before him also, before Dr. Manmohan Singh, who agreed that, look, Pakistan is as much, has a problem with terrorism, if not more than India. I mean, they are the leaders who are getting assassinated, their hotels are bombed more frequently, their navy is attacked in Karachi, their dargahs are blown to smithereens. This is a very, very serious concern for both countries, and it has been reflected in both the joint statements and in the answer they gave to a very kind of a tendentious media that I think has very happily been sidelined, and the officials of the two countries have been able to make a case for a foreign minister's visit to Islamabad in September, and hopefully the Prime Minister will also be able to make it, because not just because he wants to go there, but because I think it's about time that somebody at his level did make a visit. It's been, when did we last have one such visit? The Pakistanis have been coming here, but what is this? Why are we being so coy? And what is this thing about terrorism that only seems to affect, I mean, the way we go about Abu Jindal, if you were in Srinagar and looking at this news broadcast, what would you be concluding? That these people are not interested in what happens in Kashmir? Fishermen in Gujarat might not be...
right, Mr. Naqvi, we take your point, pertinent point that you've raised here as well. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll come back to you in just a bit if you stay with us. Also joining us on the program is Shankar Mukherjee, former ambassador. I'd like to welcome him to the program as well. But I'll come to Anuradha first and ask you this. You heard what Javed Naqvi had to say. Now, this is the Daily Telegraph quoting Asif Ali Zardari, the president of Pakistan. Now, this admittedly is an old quote, but it's a quote attributed to him anyway. Let us be truthful to ourselves and make a candid admission of the realities. The terrorists of today were the heroes of yesteryears until 9/11 occurred, and they began to haunt us as well. Now, he also says they were deliberately created and nurtured as a policy to achieve some short-term tactical objectives. How long do you think Pakistan can keep up this discourse when it comes to admitting that individuals and organizations are not using Pakistani soil to plan terror activities in India?
Look, I think the Pakistani army does have a credibility problem. And here I would disagree slightly with Javed, because I think one cannot homogenize everything. The fact is that the Pakistani people, yes, they have been big victims of terrorism, but the Pakistani army still continues to use it as a strategic instrument in some cases, and they have this good terror, bad terror policy, and they have a policy of denial, of mystification. As you can see, even, of course, they'll deny the Abu Jindal case, just like they are denying the Osama bin Laden case to the Americans, who are even their closest allies. And they cannot afford to admit it, because then it will be shown as a rogue state, whereas, but parts of the Pakistani state and establishment, whether it's a PPP or the people, they themselves are pretty fed up of the army also, but still they can't do without it, so they justify it. So, but I think we have to put up the pressure, and we have evidence that Abu Jindal and Kasab, they have similar stories. There was a control room, and how do you establish a control room without some support from the state? Right. So I think we have to show the complexity of that and the nature of that state.
Right. Let me put the same question before I come to Mr. Dutta. Let me go to Shiv Shankar Mukherjee and ask you this. Now, Jilani, the Pakistani foreign secretary, has said his country is willing to enter comprehensive cooperation in order to defeat the forces of terrorism. Now, but at the same time, he rejects any role of Pakistani state actors or any agencies of Pakistan in those attacks. Now, aren't we then, sir, at an impasse? Since our Home Minister has already said that we possess the information that implicates actors from Pakistan.
Look, policy is not made by the people. Let's get real. We all talk about people-to-people contacts. The people are wonderful. Everybody wants peace. People is made by the rulers. The rulers of Pakistan are the army. What the Pakistani Foreign Secretary says is, to my mind, the ultimate in irrelevance. It is useful for media to talk about, for analysts to write columns. The fact is that there is a hostile element, which is the Pakistani army, which rules Pakistan and which has an agenda where its enemy number one is India. So, as far as I am concerned, to answer your question, the Pakistani Foreign Secretary's statement, in terms of diplomacy, can be used perhaps to see where the wind is blowing and so on and so forth. But in terms of our
going forward relations,
not just the relationship, in terms of our security, I don't think it matters.
Right. Let me come to Mr. Dutta now. He's been waiting very patiently. Sir, let's talk about the other issue that came up for discussion, the Kashmir issue. The fact that Jalil Abbas Gilani met Hurriyat leaders separately has irked a lot of people in the establishment. Now, should that at least, should we allow, in your opinion, for separatists to meet officials that come from Pakistan, to meet them, because some people would say it clearly undermines the Indian government's position, or are you of the opinion that it can only help, it won't harm anything?
No, I don't think so. It is going to help. It would rather harm the overall scenario, and especially in terms of diplomatic channels and in terms of diplomatic talks, I think it's not a very healthy sign. I would just cite in a small example, I mean, how would the Pakistani establishment react if the Indian Foreign Secretary or the Indian Foreign Minister goes to Pakistan and he meets in the separatist leaders from Balochistan or from Sindh before meeting the officials of the Pakistan government? I think Pakistan has to understand that it cannot, go in for this catch-22 kind of a situation. Second thing is, like, for better ties with India and for fomenting better peaceful relationship, it is very good that we are going strong on the economic front, and there has been a lot of people-to-people contact. But what I understand is, like, for betterment of our relationship, Pakistan has to come out of this historic denial, which it does every now and then whenever it is cornered on the issue of terrorism. It has to come out of this historic denial that state-sponsored, it's not state-sponsored, and people there in the Pakistani state who are working with the ISI or with the Pakistani army, they are not hand in glove with the Al-Qaeda as well as with the Taliban, separatist and insurgent forces.
Well, point taken, sir. Let me throw this question to Javed Naqvi, if he's still with us. Mr. Naqvi, if you can hear me, Mr. Gilani meeting the Hurriyat leaders separately, do you think people in the establishment, like I said before, have been irked by that fact? Do you think that is something that India should have foreseen and perhaps tried to stop?
It is a routine thing for Pakistani ministers, foreign ministers, heads of states, heads of governments, foreign secretaries. They have been doing this since the Vajpayee era and before. Meeting the Hurriyat has never bothered the Indian government, but I always notice that the media finds something on it to chew. I think there is something fishy about the way it is all orchestrated, because you will not find this in the discussion between Mr. Mathai and Mr. Gilani. It is not there in the joint statement. It is not there even when they were provoked to make statements in the press conference. But somehow, we, the media, conclude that, oh, this has been a very, very... And I disagree with this equating Balochistan with Kashmir, because the two countries are not discussing Balochistan. However, they are discussing Kashmir. I mean, whether that may be a sad fact for India, but it is a fact nevertheless. And without that discussion, I don't think there would be any discussion between India and Pakistan. So it is, I think, a little far-fetched to equate a foreign minister of India going and meeting separatists from Balochistan. Right. Because that is not the equation that the two countries have agreed on.
Right, right. So
and when we did discuss, including Balochistan in our bilateral contacts, it is the Indian media and the Indian system and the Indian hawks who jumped at the throat of Prime Minister Manmohan
Right.
Singh and almost forced him to renege.
Right, Mr. Naqvi, let me
On
go
what
to
was
Vinod
agreed.
Sharma quickly and ask him whether he agrees with you or not. You heard what Javed Naqvi said.
No,
There is no such problem with Hurriyat leaders meeting Pakistani officials,
You
is there?
see, yes, I would broadly agree with him, but I use a different language. You see, we have been allowing Hurriyat leaders to visit Pakistan. Some of the elected leaders, people who take oath under the Constitution of India, contest elections under the Constitution of India, like Mehbooba Mufti, have been to Pakistan. If I remember correctly, even Omar Abdullah has been to Pakistan.
Right, yes.
So there is no problem, and this only adds great luster to Indian democracy that we allow free movement to these leaders who have been consistently badgering freedom of speech, that they are saying that they don't have freedom of speech, while the fact remains that people who are in disagreement with the establishment on either side of the border, there is a much greater degree of freedom of speech on the Indian side of Kashmir than one can imagine on the Pakistani side of Kashmir. And this is the point which the Indian side should be harping upon between two elections. The irony is that once elections are held in Kashmir, the field is left wide open for the Hurriyat to dominate the discourse. I think that the discourse has to be made more balanced, and if the discourse is balanced, then whatever aberrations which Javed says are there in the media, and these aberrations are on both sides. Don't forget that when this confusion over Surjit and Sarabjit happened, it was the Pakistani media, the hardline element there, which started badgering Zardari and saying that, oh, you are releasing their people, while our people, our Kashmiris who are in jails, they have not been released. So I think that you have elements on both sides who are not for peace, they have a vested interest in conflict. But at the same time, Kashmir and Balochistan is not comparable for the simple reason that A, we don't claim any interference in Balochistan, and secondly, it is not a territorial dispute between India and Pakistan.
Right.
Balochistan is not a territorial dispute between India and Pakistan, and we must remember that 1972 Simla Pact talks about unresolved issues.
Right.
Which is Kashmir.
Right,
So
absolutely.
we accept that we are going to discuss Kashmir without prejudice to our respective positions.
So we have to take a small break right now. We'll come back and discuss what the future holds with respect to India-Pakistan relations. Don't go anywhere. Keep watching The Big Picture. Lots more coming on the other side of this break. Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Picture. We're still discussing the Foreign Secretary level talks that just concluded in New Delhi between the Foreign Secretaries of India and Pakistan. Mr. Mukherjee, I'd like to ask you this. The Pakistan Foreign Secretary has also said that top officials come together, both countries, to defeat terrorism, like I mentioned before. Should this at least then be seen as one positive development, or would you say that he's just being a diplomat and speaking the language one is expected to speak at such events? Hardliners would refer us back to the fact that he refuses to acknowledge the presence of terror perpetrators on Pakistani soil. So is it just mere lip service then?
You know, there's a saying in diplomacy, watch what they do, not what they say. As I was, just half an hour before I was coming to this program, there was a news on the Indian TV about LAshkar-e-Taiba militants having been apprehended in Kashmir.
London. In Kashmir, oh.
So what the Pakistani Foreign Secretary says, or senior people from Pakistan says, is one thing. What they do on the ground is completely another thing. So to answer your question, I would say that in terms of diplomatic talk, he would, of course, say all the right things. What we have to see is what they are doing on the ground. And on the ground, I see nothing except a continuance of Pakistan's policy of creating as much trouble for India as possible.
Right, right. Let me come to Anuradha quickly and ask, do you believe, ma'am, as some would suggest, especially Mr. Javed Naqvi has been very critical of the media today. Let me also join him in criticizing my own, my fellow media persons, that the offer of a joint probe by Pakistan is disingenuous, a sort of a red herring to divert attention from individuals and organizations, the Jamaat-ul-Dawahs, the Hafiz Sayyids that exist in Pakistan. Do you think that that theory holds any water?
No, I think I would argue that the whole world is watching Pakistan today. You can see the context. Today they have reopened NATO supply lines. So they are under pressure. They are also victims. And I think if they offer joint kind of investigation, one can take it in a measured way and after all hold them. There is a rhetorical entrapment, in the sense, if they have a rhetoric, let us hold them to that rhetoric.
Right.
If they want peace, let us hold them to that peace, but give them also some chance and not just corner them. So I would argue that, and nuclear CBMs, for example, all these are very important issues.
And that's been mentioned in the joint statement as well.
Exactly. And these are the nuclear powered states staring at each other, and we don't have the kind of CBMs that even in the Cold War that Russia and US had. Those are very important.
Mr. Dutta, would you agree with what Anuradha just said?
Yes, I would absolutely agree with Professor Chinoy on this, and especially the measures which have been declared and the initiatives which are being tried on the CBMs in relation to nuclear capabilities, and all these are very welcome sign. And I think it should have been done long time before, but better late than never. It has been initiated, which is a healthy development. But having said that, as I was initially saying, that I mean, in the ground level, at the ground reality, how much has Pakistan done on the issue of terrorism? That is something which needs to be really addressed. We should not forget that when the Mumbai attack happened, like Pakistan had denied Kasab, even the citizenship of Kasab, it had denied to take back the dead bodies of those terrorists who were killed in that Mumbai attack.
Right.
So these are very sensitive issues, and these are very important issues on which Pakistan cannot go for any further historic denials, because the whole world is watching them. They have been exposed on the World Trade Center attacks also, on the London attack also, on the tube raids.
The whole world is watching Pakistan. Point taken.
Them.
Point taken. Let me go to Javed Naqvi very quickly, very briefly, sir, if you could. SM Krishna is now going to Pakistan in September, if all goes well. One would think even he was not enthusiastic after about reaching an agreement of any sort when he crosses the border. What is your take on it when he goes to September? Do you think he'll be hopeful of achieving something there?
I'm quite certain that whenever foreign ministers meet, they meet with an agenda, and I see no reason to doubt whatever has been discussed between the foreign secretaries is leading up to something. A positive trajectory is what the phrase was when they held the talks, and I see the foreign minister only building on that when he visits Islamabad in September, and I hope that very soon after that, Dr. Manmohan Singh will be able to visit the neighboring country.
Right. Mr. Naqvi, thank you so much for joining us on The Big Picture. That was Javed Naqvi, senior journalist, talking to us on the phone line. Sir, let me come to you. First of all, let me put the same question to you. SM Krishna, one would think that after sort of an impasse on the Abu Jundal and the 26/11 perpetrators has come out, SM Krishna is going to Pakistan in September now. Would you agree with Javed Naqvi that he would go with an agenda, and are you hopeful that something might come out of it?
Well, I don't think in terms of Pakistan moving towards a genuine attempt to redefine a new paradigm of relations with India, no, I don't think so. I don't think anybody who has a sense of the ground realities of the relationship between India and Pakistan's attitude to India overall will expect a kind of sea change in the relationship. But I must say that the Indian government over the last few years, under the leadership of the present Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, I mean, he has expended a huge amount of political capital in trying to bring Pakistan to a realization that peace is the answer. In the face of a lot of criticism within India itself, I mean, he's done that, and I think the foreign minister will take that message across.
Right.
I, unfortunately, or
Do not share the
regrettably,
same
don't
optimism.
share the feeling that Pakistanis will, on the ground, they will make the right noises, but on the ground, I am pessimistic about whether they will change their attitude.
Point taken, sir. Point taken. Anuradha Chinoy, do you share the pessimism that Mr. Mukherjee has just shared with us?
I think it will depend on the internal politics. If the army's role decreases, the peace constituency will increase, and at the moment, I think the army has taken very small steps back, but it's still very powerful as an institution, and it has distorted all the structures, including the judiciary.
Right.
So that comes in the way of peace, but nonetheless, there are forces which also want peace, and they can see the the strengths that Pakistan itself will get out of this peace.
Last word on the show, as usual, goes to Vinod Sharma. Sir, looking forward now. This secretary level talks have happened. There are obviously conflicting views in the media and the establishment that, like Mr. Mukherjee just said, he's not very optimistic about what Pakistan does, and they do something and they say something else. Where would you see relations going, looking forward now?
You see, I don't see anything major happening in the immediate future for the simple reason that that country is headed for an election. And the government there it doesn't have much creditworthiness in the eyes of the people. By the same time, it's a fact that all the political parties that are today represented in the National Assembly of Pakistan are for good relations with India. I'm not talking about Jamaat-e-Islami, which is not part of the parliamentary process and which boycotted the last elections, and I'm not talking about Jamaat-ud-Dawa and other such fringe groups, Though they have a lot of street muscle and they can whip up a lot of protests to vitiate the atmosphere, and ambient between India and Pakistan for the talks is very crucial. But I think the next government, assuming that if this next government is of Nawaz Sharif's stated position is that that Pakistan has a vested interest in promoting peace.
Right.
But the imponderable, as always, remains the Pakistan army.
Right.
And the Pakistan army, this government had virtually outsourced India-Pak relations in terms of policy making to the Pakistan army, besides AF-Pak and besides Pakistan-US.
Right.
So they are a major factor. But look, there have been some very nuanced changes. Like you are discussing Siachen.
Briefly, sir.
You're discussing Siachen today. There was a time when there'd be huge protests if you would discuss Siachen minus Kashmir.
Right.
That nuanced change has happened. I would be rather optimistic seeing that our Kashmir is relatively more peaceful today.
Absolutely.
It can't be relatively more peaceful without some degree of restraint on the other side.
Right.
But at the same time, I do not expect the Pakistan army and the establishment to entirely forego the instrumentality of terror in order to pressure India or threaten India.
We have to end the show then. Thank you so much, all my guests, for joining me. Of course, Javed Naqvi joined us on the show as well. Shiv Shankar Mukherjee, thank you so much. Vinod Sharma, Anuradha Chinoy, as well as Dutta. Of course, the X factor, the mystery factor will be the imponderable, as Vinod Sharma put it, will be the Pakistani army as we go forward. For the time being, we're all looking forward to SM Krishna's trip to Pakistan in September. Thank you so much for joining us on The Big Picture tonight. Till next time when we get you another edition of Big Picture, Athar Khan saying goodbye, good night, and thank you for watching.